When the image of Rome comes to mind, the imagination conjures up majestic forums adorned with statues, the Colosseum where crowds once roared, and triumphant military campaigns that transformed disparate tribes into compliant provinces. However, this vivid depiction captures only a fraction of Rome's grandeur, for it was not merely a military machine, but a civilization relentlessly driven by a thirst for knowledge, trade, and new discoveries. Roman legions were not confined to European borders. Their ships plowed seas that struck fear into other peoples. Merchants traversed scorching deserts, and ambassadors reached the most remote corners of the known world, even venturing beyond its horizons. In this narrative, we shall set aside tales of mad emperors and bloody conquests. Today, we will trace the paths of Roman explorers, those who carried the name of Rome to lands where Latin was alien, where imperial coins were considered curiosities, and linen togas contrasted with exquisite Eastern silks. Contrary to popular belief, the Romans ventured much further, into India, deep into Africa, into Vietnam, China, and Sri Lanka, places where history seemingly ended. But Rome managed to extend it a little further. This is not just a listing of routes and distances. It is a story of what a civilization can achieve when its ambitions are as boundless as its empire. Long before European cartographers embarked on the ambitious task of mapping the world, an invisible thread already connected cultures separated by vast distances: the legendary Silk Road. This ancient route witnessed the rise and fall of empires, cultural exchange, and economic prosperity. The genesis of this grand story began when the forces of the Han dynasty in China triumphed over the formidable Xiongnu nomads, widely considered to be the ancestors of the Mongols. Through military might and strategic genius, the Chinese regained control of Gansu, a narrow corridor stretching between harsh desert mountains and fertile oases. In doing so, they secured a vital trade route that extended from the eastern reaches of Asia to the shores of the Mediterranean, becoming a crucial link between East and West. Valuable goods flowed through this corridor: thoroughbred horses, precious jade, exotic spices, and advanced knowledge. But above all, the Silk Road gained its fame from silk, a symbol of luxury and refinement. Chinese silk, so delicate and lustrous it seemed woven from moonlight, was accessible only to a select few, primarily emperors. Yet, its reputation spread far beyond the Middle Kingdom, reaching Rome itself. The Parthians, rulers of the vast Iranian deserts, were the first to appreciate the splendor of this marvel. They guarded it meticulously, seeing it not only as a work of art but also as a source of immense profit. It was Parthian merchants who sold silk to the Romans at exorbitant prices, skillfully acting as intermediaries between two distant worlds, profiting from high demand and limited supply. A craving for luxury, like an unquenchable fire, consumed the Roman Empire, eager for new experiences and riches. In 53 BC, Consul Crassus, an influential member of the Triumvirate, launched a fateful invasion into Parthian lands, driven not only by a desire for glory but also by the hope of seizing the key to mysterious Eastern treasures. However, he underestimated the enemy's might. Lacking effective cavalry and misled by incompetent advisors, Crassus fell into a meticulously planned ambush and was brutally executed. The Parthians, as if mocking his greed, poured molten gold down his throat, turning his death into an ominous metaphor. Despite the crushing military defeat, the Roman desire for silk only intensified. During Augustus's reign, this exquisite material became an integral part of the Roman aristocracy's wardrobe. The Senate, concerned about the moral decay of society, attempted to ban the use of silk, but in vain. Silk, like a drug, was addictive. It symbolized exoticism, high status, and unrestrained luxury. Thus Rome, unable to conquer China, and without even knowing its precise location, succumb to its gentle power. But this was merely the beginning. Driven by a thirst for profit, the Romans began seeking more direct routes to eastern riches, bypassing the Parthian intermediaries. They embarked on long voyages, penetrated deep into Asia, leaving traces that time could not erase. Rome understood that power rested not only on the strength of arms, but also on flourishing trade. And if silk, spices, and precious stones flowed from the east, then it was necessary to seek the sources of these treasures beyond the boundless deserts, beyond the treacherous Parthians, beyond the limits of the known world. And so, the Roman Empire's gaze turned to the open seas. Following the subjugation of Egypt, marked by the fall of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, Egyptian harbors became strategic gateways, opening the path to the Indian Ocean. From ports such as Berenice, Arsino, and Mascarmas, Roman ships set sail for the shores of India. Greek mariners, in the empire's service, skillfully utilized the monsoon winds, charting trade routes to ports like Barbarican, Budoj, Muziris, and Paduki, exotic names that increasingly appeared in the scrolls of imperial merchants. There, the Romans discovered a thriving and extensive market. India offered a wide array of goods: cotton, pearls, precious stones, ivory, spices, dyes, nard, medicinal herbs, and, of course, silk. In turn, Rome offered what it excelled at: gold, silver, exquisite jewelry, glasswares, wine, decorated linen, imperial coins, and, most importantly, the promise of unprecedented profit. In these markets, Roman gold flowed like a river, to such an extent that authors like Pliny the Elder expressed concern that the empire's wealth was draining into the east. However, this did not deter the Roman nobility, eager for exotic fragrances, luxurious fabrics, and sacred stones, for which they were willing to pay any price. But the Romans sought more than just goods in India. They were also drawn by the unknown. They showed interest in Indian philosophy, medicine, and architecture. In the workshops of Indian artisans, they found techniques similar to their own. In the temples, they heard stories of gods and beliefs which, though different from Roman ones, sparked spiritual quests that were only just beginning to emerge in the Roman world. The encounter between two civilizations, Rome and India, was not a fleeting historical episode. Archaeological finds, such as Roman amphorae discovered on India's shores and imperial coins scattered across the territory, serve as vivid proof of the strong ties between these two worlds. Even in Pompeii, buried beneath Vesuvius's ash, a figurine of the Indian goddess Lakshmi was found, as if a symbol of India's presence at the very heart of the Roman Empire. Despite the oceans and cultural differences separating them, Rome and India established robust relations, founded not on conquest but on trade. It was these trade routes that formed the invisible bridge connecting these two ancient civilizations. Rome, with its temples, complex rituals, and veneration of household gods, opened its doors to the East and, along with it, to new spiritual teachings. Romans became acquainted with ideas of renunciation of worldly possessions, the attainment of enlightenment, the wheel of karma, and the liberation of the soul. One of the most striking events was the arrival of an Indian embassy at the court of Augustus. As a gift, the ambassador presented a diplomatic letter written on animal skin and demonstrated unwavering faith. One member of the delegation, a Buddhist monk, performed an act of self-immolation in Athens, even before reaching Rome, to demonstrate his devotion. He uttered no word, asked for no help, but simply sat in the lotus position and committed himself to the flames. For the Romans, raised in traditions of spiritual sacrifices involving gods, altars, and tangible rewards, this scene proves simultaneously incomprehensible, unsettling, and unforgettable. The Roman Empire, as the hub of a vast network of trade routes and cultural exchanges, was a melting pot where East and West intertwined in a dance of ideas and traditions. One such silent testament to cultural interpenetration was a statue of Buddha, discovered by archaeologists in the Egyptian port of Berenice, within a temple dedicated to the goddess Isis. It stood there, surrounded by columns, amidst clouds of incense and the sound of chants, like a foreign envoy accepted by Buddhist traders whose ships had plied the waters between India and the Red Sea for centuries. Such artifacts, like sparks, spread throughout the empire. In Pompeii, amongst luxurious villas and exquisite frescoes, a miniature ivory figurine depicting the Hindu goddess Lakshmi was found. How did it come to be in this Roman city? Perhaps it was brought in a box of spices as an exotic gift for a Roman matron, or perhaps it served as a talisman in the hands of an overseas merchant. The answer to this question will forever remain a mystery, but the very fact of its presence speaks volumes. Even Christian authors, such as Saint Jerome, recorded in their works the story of Buddha's birth, recounting an immaculate virgin, a prophetic dream, and a divine incarnation. These motifs seemed remarkably familiar to them, yet they came not from Judea but from the distant Himalayas. It was a touch of a different spirituality, a different view of the human soul. Although these contacts were not widespread and did not fundamentally alter the empire's character, they left indelible marks in stone, in art, and in the memory of generations. For when a civilization is open to perception, when it is willing to listen, observe, and recognize the existence of truth beyond its own borders, it gains a chance at immortality. For centuries, the majestic Roman and Chinese empires existed in their own worlds, seemingly oblivious to one another. However, their fates were secretly intertwined by threads of trade, whispers of rumors, the gleam of silk, and ambitious dreams of territorial expansion. Despite never directly clashing, their influence was felt at the most distant frontiers of the known world. It was through the lands of Vietnam, situated in the heart of Southeast Asia, that the paths of these two great civilizations began to converge. In the 2nd century AD, Claudius Ptolemy, in his work, Geography, mentions the arrival of a group of Roman merchants in the coastal city of Cattigara, located at the mouth of the Catharis River. Modern archaeologists are convinced that the Catharis River refers to the mighty Mekong, and Cattigara is the ancient city of Ki, situated in modern-day southern Vietnam. It was there, in bustling markets, surrounded by palm trees and shrouded in mist, that the Romans engaged in lively trade, exchanging goods, coins, and curious stories with local inhabitants who spoke unfamiliar languages, wore light clothing, and worshipped unknown gods. Archaeological finds in this region bear witness to significant cultural exchange. Roman glass beads, exquisite jewelry, and fragments of gold processed using italic techniques have been discovered. These artifacts are undeniable proof of a fleeting but significant contact that had far-reaching consequences. The Roman Empire had reached the borders of the Han Empire, finding itself on the doorstep of powerful China. While Roman historians remained silent, Chinese annals did not, recording in the chronicles of the Han dynasty the arrival of envoys from the enigmatic kingdom of Daqin, as they referred to Rome. The diplomats presented the Middle Kingdom with exotic gifts, elephant tusks, rhinoceros horns, and tortoise shells, gathered during their exotic travels through the lands of Southeast Asia, before appearing before the Chinese emperor. The envoys claimed they had been sent by King Anduin, whom modern historians identify with Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. Although Chinese records do not clarify the status of the arrivals, whether official diplomats or traders acting in the emperor's interest, one thing is clear: China and Rome existed in each other's consciousness not as enemies or allies, but as distant reflections. Each empire saw in the other its likeness, distorted by the immensity of the world. In Roman circles, whispers circulated about mysterious inhabitants of distant lands, skillfully weaving silk and erecting cities bathed by waters where jade was mined. Chinese chronicles, in turn, recounted a great Western empire ruled by wise and proud sovereigns, constructing eternal roads and amphitheaters where people battled unimaginable beasts. There was no place for invasions or conquests, but the very fact of contact became a unique form of eternity for two empires so far removed from each other. The forgotten heart of Africa, incredible Roman expeditions. Whilst the East beckoned Rome with the splendor of its silks, the aroma of spices, and mysterious philosophical teachings, the South captivated the empire with an even greater mystery. Uncharted Africa, that vast continent with endless sands, impenetrable jungles, and myths, stretching beyond the Sahara, represented a territory not easily conquered by arms or money, yet it nonetheless aroused keen interest among emperors, scholars, and warriors. The first significant expedition was organized by Cornelius Balbus in 19 BC. Leading 10,000 legionaries, he set out from Libya and penetrated the lands of the Garamantes, a mysterious Saharan civilization that flourished in hidden oases and fortified mud settlements. Roman troops reached a river, mistakenly believing it to be the source of the Nile, but in reality, they had discovered an entirely different world. Decades later, General Suetonius Paulinus undertook a daring campaign through the Atlas Mountains, traversed the barren deserts of Morocco, and descended into lands that became increasingly harsh and inhospitable. According to historical accounts, some of his soldiers reached the Drah River, venturing into areas close to modern Mauritania and the Sahel. The Sahara lured the Romans not only with trade prospects, but also with a thirst for discovery. Alongside trade caravans crossing the sands, larger exploratory expeditions were dispatched. During Nero's reign, the military commander Septimius Flaccus received an unusual assignment to locate the legendary lake where hippopotamuses resided, mentioned by Ptolemy. Flaccus began his journey from Tripolitania, traversed the Tibesti mountain range, and reached the territory of modern Chad. According to Phoenician geographers, elephants and rhinoceroses inhabited these lands, and local tribes spoke incomprehensible languages. Such expeditions were not isolated incidents. Festus, leading the 3rd Augustan Legion, repeated part of Balbus's route and reached the equatorial jungles, sailing down a river to its mouth, in the territory of modern Nigeria. A few years later, the diplomat Julius Maternus crossed the Gulf of Sirte, reached the Kufra oasis, and met the king of the Garamantes. He even participated in battles against rebels, known as the Rusii, near the modern Central African Republic. As a gift, Maternus brought a 2-horned rhinoceros to Rome, which was displayed in the Colosseum arena, astonishing the Roman imagination. These ventures were not colonial conquests, but rather adventurous exploratory missions, attempts to build bridges into the unknown. In an era when most civilizations were confined to their immediate surroundings, Rome sent its people deep into the desert, not knowing if they would find water or if they would return. And whilst the Romans did not establish provinces or erect fortifications in these lands, they left their imprints, coins, pottery, names, and legends testifying to their audacious journeys. In the depths of the African continent, where Roman legions did not tread, the echo of the Roman Empire nonetheless found its resonance. This fleeting but audacious contact represents one of the most striking manifestations of the indomitable Roman spirit. On the northwestern fringe of Africa, where the endless sands of the Sahara meet the azure waters of the Mediterranean Sea, and the majestic Atlas Mountains cast their shadows across the horizon, there once existed the ancient kingdom of Mauritania. This was a land inhabited by Berber tribes who skillfully engaged in trade, fought bravely, and adeptly negotiated with the most powerful empires of the time. When King Bacchus II died in 33 BC, Rome seized its opportunity. Instead of a direct military invasion, Rome opted for a more diplomatic approach, establishing a client kingdom. Juba II, a Numidian prince educated in Rome and married to Cleopatra Selene II, daughter of the famous Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony, was placed on the throne. This marriage was not only a political alliance, but also a cultural bridge, connecting Egyptian, Greek, and Latin traditions. Thus, Roman Africa began to take root, embedded in a tapestry of diverse cultures. Juba II proved to be more than just a puppet in the hands of Roman emperors. He was an outstanding scholar, a tireless explorer, and a passionate devotee of knowledge. Under his wise rule, Mauritania blossomed into a thriving commercial and scientific center. Inspired by Phoenician seafarers, Juba II organized naval expeditions into the Atlantic Ocean. From the port of Mogador, located in modern-day Morocco, his ships set sail for the Canary Islands and possibly even Madeira, in search of a valuable secret that so captivated the Roman nobility: purple dye extracted from sea mollusks, symbolizing wealth and power. Power and ambition drove these expeditions, which pursued not only the search for valuable dyes. They represented audacious attempts to expand the horizons of the known world, venturing into the boundless ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the limit where, according to the beliefs of the time, land gave way to a gaping abyss. After Juba II's death, his son, Ptolemy of Mauritania, took the reins of power, though his fate proved tragic. Raised in the very heart of Rome, he nevertheless entered into sharp conflict with Emperor Caligula, by whose wicked command he was executed in 40 AD. This fatal act also sealed the fate of the entire kingdom. Just 4 years later, Emperor Claudius ended Mauritania's independence, annexing it as a province of the Roman Empire. He divided the territory into two parts: Mauritania Tingitana, with its center in Tingis, modern Tangier, and Mauritania Caesariensis, whose capital became Caesarea, now Churchill. Rome established direct rule, and Latin culture began to exert a profound influence on the region's architecture, trade, and religious beliefs. However, like many other Roman provinces, Mauritania's dominance was not destined to last forever. During the profound crisis of the 3rd century, when emperors succeeded one another rapidly, and the empire teetered on the brink of collapse, Berber tribes managed to regain control over a significant portion of the inland territories. Rome retained only a few coastal cities, maintaining precarious diplomatic relations with local chieftains. Despite subsequent administrative reforms carried out by Diocletian and a brief flourishing of Christianity under Roman rule, the historical turning point was irreversible. With the advent of Islam in 631 AD, the Roman era in Mauritania concluded, leaving behind a rich legacy. Ruins, ancient coins, names carved into the desert stones, and legends of an African kingdom ruled by Cleopatra's daughter, of a ruler who sought knowledge, challenged the ocean, and united continents, all bear witness to its former grandeur. The Roman Empire was not merely a military power, but a civilization that sought to understand the world beyond its known boundaries. While other peoples confined themselves to their territories, the Romans ventured beyond, equipped not only with swords, but also with maps, ships, and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. They delved deep into Africa, reached the far-flung corners of the Ganges and Congo deltas, and potentially even the walls of China. Not all expeditions ended in triumph. Some culminated in defeat in desolate lands. Yet, even there, traces of Roman presence endured. Coins discovered in distant territories, statues of Indian deities among the ruins of Pompeii, Indian elephants parading through the streets of Rome, and an image of Buddha found in an Egyptian temple. Undoubtedly, the Roman Empire was a formidable military force, but its contribution to the development of communication and cultural exchange was equally significant. Like a skilled weaver, Rome interconnected diverse cultures, religious beliefs, and intellectual concepts, forging a unique tapestry of civilization. The roads and sea routes it established served as arteries, through which caravans, pilgrims, and merchants traveled for centuries, enriching the world with goods and knowledge. Perhaps this lies at the heart of Rome's greatest legacy, not in its conquests and military might, but in its unquenchable thirst for knowledge and its pursuit of dialogue. The Romans demonstrated not only a drive for power, but also a genuine desire to engage with other worlds, to capture unfamiliar voices, and to listen to stories previously unheard. Contemplating the majestic ruins of Rome, it is easy to assume an era has concluded. However, if we trace the routes of silk, explore the ports of India, peer into desert oases, and unearth Roman coins lost in Vietnam, we grasp a more profound truth. Rome was not merely an empire. It was a portal that flung open the doors to the unknown, and it possessed the courage to step through them.